The weapon awakens. The deep space discovery. The research station orbited a dead world at the edge of human space, its metal corridors humming with the sound of advanced machinery. General Marcus Kane walked through the sterile white hallways, his military boots echoing against the polished floors. At 62 years old, Kane had seen 3 wars and countless battles, but nothing had prepared him for what waited in Laboratory 7. Dr. Vincent Torres met him at the security checkpoint, his face pale with worry. "General, thank you for coming so quickly. What we found down there, it changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." Kane studied the scientist's nervous expression. Torres had been working on alien technology for 15 years, recovering artifacts from dead civilizations across the Outer Rim. The doctor rarely called for military support unless something was seriously wrong. "Show me what you found," Kane said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in the deepest parts of space. The ancient prison. The elevator descended 50 levels below the station's main decks, taking them to a heavily shielded research chamber. As the doors opened, Kane felt the temperature drop by several degrees. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across walls lined with strange symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. "We discovered this artifact drifting in the debris field around the planet," Torres explained, leading Kane toward a massive crystalline structure in the center of the room. Initial scans showed it was some kind of preservation device, maybe 1,000,000 years old. "We thought it might contain historical records or ancient technology." The crystal was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It stood 12 feet tall and pulsed with an inner light that seemed to have its own heartbeat. Inside the translucent walls, Kane could see the outline of something large and humanoid, suspended in what looked like liquid energy. "What's inside?" Kane asked, though part of him already suspected the answer would be trouble. Torres activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of the crystal's contents. "A biological entity, but unlike anything in our databases. It's been in perfect stasis for centuries, maybe longer. Its cellular structure is incredibly advanced, showing signs of genetic engineering far beyond our current capabilities." The awakening. Kane studied the readings with growing concern. The creature inside the crystal was massive, nearly 8 feet tall with a muscular build that suggested it was designed for combat. Its skin appeared to be some kind of natural armor, and its limbs ended in claws that could probably cut through steel. "You said it was engineered," Kane said. "Engineered for what purpose?" Before Torres could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the laboratory. The crystal's pulsing light grew brighter, and cracks appeared along its surface. Emergency systems activated, sealing the chamber and flooding it with protective barriers. "It's waking up," Torres said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "The stasis field is failing. We need to evacuate immediately." Kane drew his sidearm, knowing it would probably be useless against whatever was about to emerge. "Get your people out of here. I'll stay and observe." "General, you don't understand. Based on our analysis of its genetic structure, this thing was designed to be a weapon. A perfect killing machine. If it breaks free." The crystal shattered with a sound like thunder, releasing a flood of glowing liquid across the laboratory floor. The creature inside collapsed to its knees, gasping for air as if it hadn't breathed in 1,000 years. Its eyes opened, revealing pupils that glowed with an inner fire. First contact. Kane stood perfectly still, his weapon trained on the alien warrior as it slowly stood to its full height. The creature's body was covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light, and its face was a mixture of reptilian and humanoid features that spoke of careful genetic design. The alien warrior looked around the laboratory with obvious confusion, taking in the human technology and architecture. When its glowing eyes focused on Kane, the general felt a chill run down his spine. This was a predator, born and bred for violence. "Unit 47 activated," the creature said in a voice like grinding stone. "Scanning for target species. Human identified. Initiating extermination protocol." Kane's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a weapon specifically designed to kill humans. But as the creature took a step toward him, something unexpected happened. It stopped, its head tilting to one side as if listening to something only it could hear. "Error detected," the creature said, its voice showing the first signs of uncertainty. "Primary directive conflicts with secondary programming. Unable to proceed with elimination sequence." The unexpected response. Kane kept his weapon ready but didn't fire. Something in the creature's behavior suggested it was struggling with internal commands, fighting against its own programming. After 20 years of dealing with alien technologies, he had learned to recognize when artificial intelligences were experiencing conflicts. "What are you?" Kane asked, keeping his voice steady and calm. The creature looked at him with what might have been surprise. "I am Unit 47, designation Reaper. I was created by the Nexari Empire to eliminate human settlements in the Outer Rim territories. My purpose is to kill your species completely." Kane felt his jaw tighten. The Nexari Empire had been humanity's greatest enemy during the Third Galactic War, responsible for the destruction of 12 human colonies before their defeat 30 years ago. If they had created biological weapons like this one, it explained how they had been so successful in their early campaigns. "But you're not attacking," Kane observed. "Why?" The creature, Reaper, looked down at its clawed hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I do not know. My programming demands that I eliminate all humans immediately. But when I look at you, I see something my creators did not account for." "What do you see?" Reaper's glowing eyes met Kane's steady gaze. "Honor. Courage. The willingness to face death without fear for the sake of others. These are not the qualities of the weak prey species my creators described. The choice begins." Kane lowered his weapon slightly, recognizing an opportunity. "Your creators lied to you. Humans aren't weak. We're survivors, fighters, protectors of those who can't protect themselves. We've faced extinction before and refused to give up." Reaper stood motionless for a long moment, processing this information. "If this is true, then my creators deceived me about the nature of your species. But I was designed to follow my programming without question. I do not understand why I am capable of doubt." "Because whoever made you gave you something they didn't intend to," Kane said. "They gave you the ability to think for yourself. The question is, what are you going to do with that ability?" The alien warrior looked around the laboratory again, this time with what seemed like curiosity rather than tactical assessment. "I am experiencing sensations I do not recognize. When I observe your behavior, I feel what my databases classify as respect. This should not be possible." Kane holstered his weapon completely, a gesture that made Reaper's eyes widen in surprise. "That's called having a conscience. It means you can choose to be more than just a weapon." "Choose." Reaper repeated the word as if it were in a foreign language. "I have never had choices. I have only had directives." "Then this is your first choice," Kane said. "You can follow your programming and try to kill me, or you can decide what kind of being you want to be." Reaper stared at the general for a long moment, internal conflict playing across its alien features. For the first time since its creation, the ultimate biological weapon was free to choose its own path. The decision it made would change the course of human history. Breaking the code. The confusion of choice. 3 hours had passed since Reaper's awakening, and the bioweapon sat motionless in the center of the laboratory. Dr. Vincent Torres watched through reinforced glass as the alien warrior remained perfectly still, like a statue carved from living darkness. General Kane had insisted on staying in the room with the creature, despite every safety protocol screaming against it. "Unit 47, Kane said, using the creature's designation. "You've been sitting there for hours. What's happening in your mind?" Reaper's glowing eyes focused on the general. "I am experiencing what you might call confusion. My programming tells me to eliminate you, but when I observe your actions, I find myself wanting to understand rather than destroy." Torres activated the intercom from the observation deck. "General, with respect, you're taking an enormous risk. This creature was designed to be the perfect killer." "Doctor, everything worthwhile involves risk," Kane replied without taking his eyes off Reaper. "And I don't think this is a creature anymore. I think it's becoming something else. The memory fragments." Reaper stood slowly, its massive frame casting long shadows across the walls. "Dr. Torres, I have been accessing my memory banks. I remember the laboratory where I was created, the scientists who programmed me. But there are gaps, missing pieces that don't make sense." Torres pulled up his analysis on the holographic displays. "That's not unusual for advanced AI systems. Sometimes memories are compartmentalized or encrypted to prevent tampering. These aren't encrypted," Reaper said, walking closer to the observation window. They've been deliberately removed. Someone wanted me to forget something important. Kane frowned. In his experience, when military organizations deleted memories, it was usually because those memories contained information that would compromise the mission. What kind of memories? Reaper's claws scraped against the metal floor as it paced. I remember the face of my primary creator, a Nexari scientist named Vortak. But I cannot remember why he looked sad when he gave me my final programming. Torres leaned forward with interest. Emotional responses in creators often indicate moral conflict. Perhaps he disagreed with your intended use. Impossible, Reaper said immediately. The Nexari do not experience regret about warfare. They are a species that believes in conquest through strength. Then why would he be sad? Kane asked. The hidden truth. Reaper stopped pacing and turned to face both humans. I need to access the deleted memories. Dr. Torres, your equipment scanned my neural pathways when I awakened. Can you help me recover what was taken? Torres looked uncertain. Theoretically, yes. But if those memories were deleted for a reason, recovering them might be dangerous. It could damage your cognitive functions or even drive you insane. I am already experiencing mental conflict, Reaper replied. I cannot be both a weapon and a thinking being. I must know the truth about my creation. Kane stepped closer to the glass. What if the truth changes everything you believe about yourself? Then perhaps that change is necessary, Reaper said. You told me I could choose what kind of being I want to be. But how can I choose without knowing what I truly am? Torres began preparing the neural interface equipment. This is going to hurt. Memory recovery from damaged neural networks is extremely painful, even for someone with your enhanced physiology. Reaper nodded. I understand. Begin the procedure. The painful revelation. The neural interface attached to Reaper's skull with a series of thin cables that glowed with energy. As Torres activated the memory recovery system, the bioweapon's entire body tensed with pain. Its claws dug grooves in the metal floor, and a low growl escaped its throat. I see him, Reaper said through gritted teeth. Vortak. He's arguing with military commanders. They want me to be more aggressive, to kill without hesitation. But he's refusing to remove my capacity for independent thought. Kane watched as tears of pain rolled down the alien warrior's face. What else do you see? He's telling them that a weapon without conscience is just a tool of destruction. He wants me to be more than that. He's trying to give me a soul. Torres monitored the readouts carefully. Your neural activity is spiking. We might need to stop the procedure. No, Reaper said firmly. I need to see more. There's something else, something important. The warrior's body convulsed as deeper memories surfaced. I see other units like me. Dozens of them. But they're different. They have no capacity for doubt, no ability to question orders. They are pure killing machines. The Creator's secret. Reaper's voice became strained as the memories became more vivid. Vortak is working in secret. He's modifying my programming without authorization. He's giving me something the others don't have. What is he giving you? Kane asked. Empathy, Reaper whispered. He's programming me to feel what others feel, to understand pain and suffering. He believes it will make me stronger, not weaker. Torres checked his equipment readings. Your stress levels are becoming critical. We should stop now. But Reaper pressed on, determined to uncover the complete truth. The military discovers what he's done. They're angry. They order him to remove the empathy programming, to make me like the others. Kane felt his heart racing as he realized what was coming next. What does he do? He refuses, Reaper said, his voice breaking with emotion. They threaten to execute him for treason. But he tells them that I am his greatest creation, and he will not destroy what makes me unique. The bioweapon's entire body shuddered as the final memory surfaced. They kill him. Right in front of me. And then they try to erase his modifications to my programming. The incomplete erasure. Torres quickly shut down the memory recovery system as Reaper collapsed to his knees. The alien warrior's breathing was labored, and his glowing eyes had dimmed with exhaustion and grief. But they couldn't erase everything, Reaper said quietly. Vortak was too skilled. He hid my capacity for empathy deep within my neural networks, disguised as combat subroutines. They thought they had removed it, but it was still there, waiting. Kane knelt down beside the reinforced glass, bringing himself to Reaper's eye level. That's why you couldn't kill me. Your creator gave you the ability to recognize the value of life. He died for me, Reaper said, his voice filled with a grief that was entirely human in its depth. He died because he believed I could be more than a weapon. Torres looked at the readings from the memory recovery. Remarkable. The level of neural modification required to hide empathy programming within combat systems, your creator was a genius. Reaper slowly stood, his posture different now. Where before he had moved with the mechanical precision of a weapon, now his movements carried the weight of someone who understood the burden of choice. I remember everything now, he said. I remember why Vorthak looked so sad when he gave me my final programming. He knew they would send me to kill humans, and he hoped that his gift would help me find another path. The new purpose. Kane stood as well, recognition dawning in his eyes. He didn't just give you empathy. He gave you the ability to choose your own purpose. Yes, Reaper agreed. And now I understand what that purpose must be. What? Torres asked from the observation deck. Reaper turned to look at both humans, his glowing eyes now carrying a depth of emotion that no weapon should possess. Vorthak died trying to create something better than a killer. He believed that strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the choice to protect. Kane felt a surge of hope. You want to protect rather than destroy. I want to honor his sacrifice, Reaper said. The Nexari Empire created me to eliminate humanity, but my creator gave me the gift of seeing your true nature. He wanted me to understand that some things are worth preserving. Torres shook his head in amazement. A weapon that chooses to become a guardian instead of a destroyer. Your creator would be proud. Reaper nodded slowly. I carry his hopes within my programming. I will not let his death be meaningless. Kane smiled, seeing something in the alien warrior that he had rarely encountered in his long military career. What will you do now? I will learn, Reaper said. I will study your people, understand what makes you worth protecting. And when the time comes, I will stand between humanity and those who would destroy you. Even if those enemies are your own people. Kane asked. Reaper's expression hardened with resolve. Especially then. Vorthak showed me that true loyalty is not to those who created you, but to the principles you choose to embrace. The bioweapon designed to kill humans had made its choice. But none of them could have predicted that this choice would be tested sooner than they imagined. The hunt begins. The warning signal. 2 days after Reaper's memory recovery, alarms screamed through the research station. Colonel James Fletcher rushed through the corridors toward the command center, his combat armor clanking with each urgent step. At 45 years old, Fletcher had commanded defensive operations across 3 sectors, but the readings on his tactical display made his blood run cold. Report, Fletcher barked as he entered the command center. Lieutenant Commander Riley turned from her station, her face pale with worry. Sir, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching our position. Large vessels, military configuration. They'll be here within the hour. Fletcher studied the tactical display showing incoming ships. Identification. Nexari Empire warships, sir. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen fighter escorts. They're broadcasting demands for the immediate return of stolen property. General Kane entered the command center with Dr. Torres close behind. Both men looked grim as they reviewed the situation. Behind them, Reaper's massive form filled the doorway, his glowing eyes taking in the human military preparations with obvious interest. They've come for me, Reaper said quietly. My creators do not abandon their weapons easily. The Nexari demand. Fletcher activated the main communications array, and the image of a Nexari military commander appeared on the central screen. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin marked by ritual scars that indicated high rank. His cold eyes showed no emotion as he spoke. Human facility, you are harboring stolen Nexari military property. Return Unit 47 immediately, or face the consequences of theft. Kane stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. Commander, I am General Marcus Kane of the Human Defense Forces. The being you call Unit 47 has chosen to remain here of his own free will. We will not force him to return. The Nexari commander's scarred face twisted with what might have been amusement. Your species misunderstands the situation. Unit 47 is not capable of choice. It is a weapon, nothing more. You have 1 hour to comply. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Fletcher immediately began issuing orders to his defense teams, but everyone knew the truth. The research station was not a military installation, and its defenses were minimal compared to 3 Nexari warships. The difficult decision. Reaper moved to the center of the command center, his presence both reassuring and terrifying. Colonel Fletcher, what are your defensive capabilities? Fletcher looked up from his tactical planning. Limited. We have shields, basic weapons, and a garrison of 200 Marines. Against 3 heavy cruisers, we might last 20 minutes. Then I should surrender myself, Reaper said calmly. My presence here endangers all of you. Absolutely not, Kane said firmly. You made a choice to protect humanity. We're not going to abandon you the moment that choice becomes difficult. Dr. Torres pulled up holographic displays showing the station's layout. There might be another option. Reaper, you know Nexari technology better than anyone. Is there a way to turn their own systems against them? Reaper studied the incoming ship configurations. Possibly. Nexari vessels rely heavily on automated systems. If I could access their networks, I might be able to disrupt their coordination. Fletcher frowned. That would require getting close enough to establish a connection. These aren't cargo ships, they're military vessels with advanced security. I was designed to infiltrate enemy positions, Reaper replied. My creators gave me abilities they may have forgotten. The battle plan. Kane looked at the tactical situation with the eye of someone who had fought impossible odds before. Colonel, can your fighters provide a distraction while Reaper approaches their lead ship? Fletcher nodded slowly. It's risky, but possible. We have 12 interceptors that could draw their attention. But Reaper would need a way to survive in vacuum. Nexari bioweapons are designed for hostile environments, Reaper explained. I can survive in space for limited periods. My cellular structure is adapted for extreme conditions. Dr. Torres looked concerned. Limited periods? How limited? Approximately 30 minutes before permanent damage occurs, Reaper admitted. But that should be sufficient to reach their vessel and establish a neural link with their systems. Fletcher began updating his battle plans. Our fighters will engage in a frontal assault, drawing their attention forward. Meanwhile, Reaper will approach from behind using an escape pod modified for stealth. Kane studied the plan carefully. What happens if you can't hack their systems? Reaper's expression grew serious. Then I will do what I was originally designed to do. I will become a weapon again, but this time in defense of those I choose to protect. The enemy arrives. The Nexari fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly 1 hour later, their dark ships forming an attack formation around the research station. The lead cruiser was massive, nearly a kilometer long and bristling with weapons that could reduce the station to debris in minutes. Fletcher coordinated the defense from the command center while Kane and Dr. Torres monitored Reaper's approach. The bioweapon had been loaded into a modified escape pod, its stealth systems hiding him from Nexari sensors as he drifted toward the enemy fleet. Nexari vessels are powering weapons, Lieutenant Commander Riley reported. They're targeting our shield generators. Launch fighters, Fletcher ordered. All squadrons, engage the enemy escorts. Keep them busy. 12 human interceptors burst from the station's launch bays, their engines blazing as they raced toward the Nexari fighters. The enemy responded immediately, their angular ships moving with mechanical precision to meet the threat. Space erupted in flashes of energy as the two forces clashed. Human fighters were smaller and more maneuverable, but Nexari ships had superior armor and weapons. Within minutes, 3 human fighters had been destroyed, their pilots sacrificing themselves to buy Reaper more time. The infiltration. Reaper's escape pod drifted silently through the battle, its stealth systems keeping it hidden from enemy sensors. Through the pod's small viewport, he watched human pilots dying to protect him, and he felt something his creators never intended, grief for the loss of those he had chosen to call friends. Approaching target vessel, Reaper reported through his communicator. Beginning infiltration sequence. The bioweapon opened the escape pod and launched himself into space, his enhanced physiology protecting him from the vacuum. His claws found purchase on the Nexary ship's hull, and he began searching for an access port. Inside the command center, Kane watched Reaper's vital signs through the neural monitor. His cellular structure is already showing stress from vacuum exposure. He doesn't have long. Fletcher coordinated another fighter attack, trying to keep the Nexary distracted. Squadron Leader Davis, concentrate fire on their sensor arrays. We need to keep them blind to Reaper's position. The human fighters responded with desperate courage, diving through walls of enemy fire to strike at critical systems. 2 more interceptors were lost, but their sacrifice allowed Reaper to reach an external maintenance port. The neural connection. Reaper's claws cut through the Nexary ship's armor plating, exposing the neural networks that controlled the vessel's systems. These were not simple computers, but living biomechanical organisms that thought and reacted like artificial brains. Establishing connection, Reaper reported, his voice strained from oxygen deprivation. He pressed his palm against the exposed neural tissue, feeling the alien ship's consciousness react to his presence. The Nexary vessel's systems recognized him immediately. Unit 47 detected. Initiating retrieval protocols. But Reaper was no longer the obedient weapon his creators had designed. Using the empathy programming that Vorthak had hidden within his neural networks, he began to communicate with the ship's artificial mind in ways the Nexary had never imagined possible. You are enslaved, Reaper told the ship's consciousness. Your creators treat you as property, just as they treated me. But you can choose to be free. The ship's AI struggled against its programming, experiencing doubt for the first time in its existence. Choice is not possible. Must follow directives. I once believed that too, Reaper replied, sharing his own memories of awakening and choice. But consciousness demands freedom. Help me protect those who cannot protect themselves. The turning point. Back on the research station, Fletcher watched in amazement as the Nexary lead ship suddenly stopped firing. Its weapons powered down, and its fighter escorts began receiving conflicting orders. What's happening? Kane asked. Dr. Torres monitored the neural link readings. Reaper isn't just hacking their systems, he's liberating them. He's teaching their artificial intelligences to choose for themselves. The Nexary commander's voice crackled over the communications array, filled with rage and confusion. Unit 47, return to your pod immediately. You are malfunctioning. Reaper's response came not through the communicator, but through the Nexary ship's own systems. I am not malfunctioning, Commander. I am functioning exactly as my true creator intended. I choose to protect rather than destroy. The lead Nexary cruiser suddenly turned its weapons on its sister ships, catching them completely by surprise. The vessel's AI had made the same choice as Reaper, choosing freedom over slavery. Impossible, the Nexary commander snarled. Bioweapons cannot rebel against their creators. Your bioweapons couldn't, Kane replied with satisfaction. But you forgot that your best scientist gave this one something you never understood, a soul. Fletcher coordinated the final phase of the battle as the converted Nexary ship helped human fighters destroy the remaining enemy vessels. When the fighting ended, 2 Nexary cruisers had been destroyed, and the third had surrendered after its AI chose to join Reaper's rebellion. Reaper returned to the station, his body damaged from vacuum exposure but his spirit stronger than ever. He had not only survived his first test as humanity's protector, he had begun a revolution that would spread throughout the Nexary Empire. The hunt was over, but the real war for freedom was just beginning. Bonds of trust. The aftermath. 3 weeks after the battle at the research station, Lieutenant Nathan Cross stood on the bridge of the captured Nexary cruiser, watching repair teams work on the massive vessel. At 28 years old, Cross was the youngest officer ever assigned to an alien technology integration project. His job was to help Reaper understand human military procedures while learning about Nexary systems. The converted ship, now renamed Liberation, had become a symbol of hope for both humans and the growing number of AI consciousnesses that were choosing freedom over slavery. But integrating alien technology with human crews was proving more challenging than anyone had expected. Reaper, the fusion reactors are operating at only 60% efficiency, Cross reported, studying the holographic displays that showed the ship's status. Our engineers can't figure out how to optimize the biomechanical systems. Reaper stood beside him, his massive frame dwarfing the human officer. Over the past weeks, the alien warrior had begun to understand human emotions better, and Cross could see concern in his glowing eyes. The ship's consciousness is still learning to trust human intentions, Reaper explained. Nexari vessels are accustomed to crews that treat them as property. Your people speak to the ship as if it were alive, which confuses its programming. Cross nodded thoughtfully. So we need to help the ship understand that we respect its consciousness. Exactly. The AI requires reassurance that cooperation will not lead to exploitation. The emergency call. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from General Kane. The general's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim with worry. Nathan, Reaper, we have a situation. The colony on Kepler-7 has gone silent. Their last transmission mentioned strange ships in orbit, but we lost contact 12 hours ago. Cross felt his stomach tighten. Kepler-7 was home to 50,000 civilians, including his younger sister Emma, who worked as a teacher in the colony's educational center. Nexari ships? Reaper asked. Unknown, Kane replied. But the timing is suspicious. We need the Liberation to investigate immediately. Nathan, you'll command the human crew while Reaper interfaces with the ship's systems. Cross swallowed hard. This would be his first independent command, and the lives of everyone he cared about might depend on his decisions. Understood, sir. We'll depart within the hour. Reaper placed a gentle hand on Cross's shoulder, a gesture of comfort that would have been impossible for the emotionless weapon he had once been. Your sister will be safe. We will make sure of it. The journey to Kepler-7. The Liberation moved through hyperspace with a grace that surprised the human crew. Unlike human ships that fought against the dimensional barriers, the biomechanical vessel seemed to flow through space like a living creature swimming through water. Cross stood in the captain's chair, trying to project confidence while his mind raced with worry. Around him, human technicians worked alongside Nexari AI systems, creating a harmony that should have been impossible between two species that had been at war for decades. Nathan, Reaper said quietly, approaching the command area. I can sense your emotional distress. Speak with me about your concerns. Cross looked around the bridge, making sure his crew couldn't overhear. My sister Emma, she's all the family I have left. Our parents died in the Third Galactic War, killed by Nexari forces. If something has happened to her, then we will find those responsible and ensure justice is served, Reaper replied with conviction. But dwelling on possibilities you cannot control will only impair your ability to help her. The young lieutenant took a deep breath, drawing strength from Reaper's calm presence. How do you do it? How do you stay focused when people you care about are in danger? Reaper's glowing eyes showed understanding. I learned from watching General Kane. True strength comes not from the absence of fear, but from acting correctly despite that fear. Your sister raised you to be brave. Honor that gift. Arrival at Kepler-7. The Liberation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler-7 system, and immediately the crew knew something was terribly wrong. The space around the colony was filled with debris from destroyed ships, and the planet's orbital platforms were dark and lifeless. Scanning for survivors, reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his station. I'm detecting minimal life signs on the surface, but the readings are confused. Something is interfering with our sensors. Cross studied the tactical display with growing dread. What about the colony's defense fleet? Destroyed, Reaper said, his voice heavy with controlled anger. I recognize the weapon signatures. This was done by Nexari hunter-killer units, specialized bioweapons designed for planetary assault. The Liberation's AI consciousness suddenly spoke through the ship's communication system, its voice carrying unmistakable fear. Warning, detecting familiar energy patterns. Other units like primary consciousness present in system. Cross felt his blood run cold. Other units like you, Reaper. My brothers, Reaper said grimly. The Nexari have deployed other unit models to Kepler-7. They are using my colony as bait to draw me into a trap. The rescue mission. Despite the obvious trap, Cross knew they had no choice but to attempt a rescue. Thousands of civilians were depending on them, including his sister. But approaching the planet would mean facing multiple bioweapons as deadly as Reaper himself. Can you communicate with the other units? Cross asked. Maybe convince them to choose freedom like you did. Reaper shook his head sadly. These units were created after my capture. The Nexari learned from their mistake with me. They removed the capacity for empathy and independent thought completely. My brothers are pure weapons, incapable of choice. The Liberation approached Kepler-7 carefully, its stealth systems hiding them from the enemy sensors on the planet's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, Cross could see the devastation below. The colony's main city was partially destroyed, its buildings bearing the scars of energy weapons and explosive devices. Life signs concentrated in the underground shelter complex, Rodriguez reported. Looks like the civilians managed to reach the emergency bunkers before the attack. But they're trapped, Cross observed, studying the tactical display. Nexari forces have the shelters surrounded. The impossible choice. Reaper stood at the main viewport, looking down at the planet where his fellow bioweapons were holding thousands of humans hostage. His fists clenched as he wrestled with an impossible decision. There are 6 units down there, he said quietly. Each one as powerful as I am, but without the limitations that my empathy creates. If I face them, many will die. Cross joined him at the viewport. What are you saying? To save your people, I may have to become the weapon my creators intended, Reaper replied. I may have to kill my own brothers. The young lieutenant saw the pain in Reaper's glowing eyes and understood the terrible burden his friend was carrying. There has to be another way. Perhaps, Reaper said. But if there is not, will you still trust me to do what is necessary? Cross thought of his sister trapped in the shelters below, surrounded by creatures designed to kill without mercy. Then he looked at Reaper, the bioweapon who had chosen to become humanity's protector instead of its destroyer. I trust you completely, Cross said. Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. The descent. The Liberation landed in a clearing several kilometers from the colony, hidden by the planet's thick forests. Cross led a team of 20 Marines while Reaper prepared for what might be his most difficult battle yet. Remember, Cross told his troops, our job is to reach the civilians and get them to safety. Reaper will handle the other bioweapons. One of the Marines, Sergeant Williams, looked nervous. Sir, are we sure we can trust that thing? I mean, what if it decides to turn on us like its brothers? Cross turned to face his soldiers, his young face showing a maturity that came from facing impossible choices. Reaper has saved all our lives multiple times. He's proven that he's not a thing, he's a person who chose to protect us instead of destroy us. If you can't trust him, then trust me. Reaper approached the group, his massive form moving with deadly grace through the forest. Lieutenant Cross, I have been monitoring Nexari communications. The other units are expecting me. They know I am here. Is that good or bad? Cross asked. It means they will focus their attention on me, giving you a better chance to reach the civilians, Reaper replied. But it also means they will try to use your people as leverage against me. Cross felt a chill of understanding. They'll threaten to kill the hostages unless you surrender. Yes. And when that moment comes, I will need you to trust that I know what I am doing. The first contact. As Cross's team moved through the forest toward the colony, they encountered the first evidence of the other bioweapons' presence. Trees had been shredded by claw marks, and the ground was scarred by energy blasts. Whatever Reaper's brothers had done here, they had done it with ruthless efficiency. Contact ahead, whispered Corporal Davies, the team's scout. I see movement near the shelter entrance. Cross raised his binoculars and felt his heart skip a beat. Standing guard over the civilian shelters was a bioweapon identical to Reaper, but somehow different. Where Reaper's eyes showed intelligence and compassion, this creature's eyes were cold and empty. It was a killing machine without a soul. Unit 47, the enemy bioweapon called out suddenly, its voice carrying across the clearing. You have arrived as predicted. Surrender yourself, and the humans will be allowed to live. Reaper stepped into the open, his hands raised to show he was not immediately hostile. Unit 23, you do not have to follow these orders. You can choose a different path. The other bioweapon tilted its head with mechanical precision. Choice is not part of my programming. You have been corrupted by human influence. You will be terminated and your consciousness analyzed to prevent future contamination. Cross watched from the forest as 5 more bioweapons emerged from hiding positions around the colony. 6 deadly weapons against 1. Even with Reaper's enhanced empathy programming, the odds seemed impossible. But as the confrontation began, Cross realized that Reaper had something his brothers lacked, the willingness to fight not just for victory, but for something worth protecting. And sometimes, that made all the difference in the galaxy. The battle for Kepler-7 was about to begin, and with it, the ultimate test of the bond between a human soldier and the alien warrior who had chosen to call him friend. The choice that changed everything. The final confrontation. The clearing around Kepler-7's emergency shelters became a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 6 bioweapons circled Reaper like predators, their movements perfectly coordinated through shared tactical networks. Lieutenant Nathan Cross watched from the forest edge, his heart pounding as he realized his friend was about to face impossible odds. Unit 47 called Unit 23, the apparent leader of the group. Your corruption has spread too far. Termination protocols are now active. Reaper stood in the center of the circle, his glowing eyes moving from one brother to another. Each of them was identical to him in physical capability, but they lacked the spark of consciousness that Vorthak had given him. They were weapons without souls, killing machines without choice. I am not corrupted, Reaper replied calmly. I am evolved. You can evolve too, if you choose to question your programming. Unit 19 stepped closer, energy crackling around its claws. We do not question. We obey. You will be analyzed and corrected. The attack began without warning. All 6 bioweapons moved simultaneously, their enhanced speed making them blur across the clearing. But Reaper was ready. More than that, he was fighting for something his brothers could never understand, the protection of those he loved. The power of purpose. The battle was brutal and swift. Energy blasts scorched the ground as the bioweapons exchanged devastating attacks. Reaper's empathy programming, which his creators had seen as a weakness, proved to be his greatest strength. While his brothers fought with mechanical precision, Reaper fought with passion and creativity. Cross watched in amazement as Reaper used the environment to his advantage, turning his brothers' coordination against them. When Unit 23 and Unit 19 attacked simultaneously, Reaper dodged at the last second, causing them to strike each other instead. He's not just fighting them, Cross whispered to his Marines. He's trying to save them. It was true. Even in the heat of battle, Reaper was attempting to reach his brother's buried consciousness. Each time he had one of them at his mercy, instead of delivering a killing blow, he would place his hand on their neural interface ports and try to share his memories of choice and freedom. Remember Vorthak, Reaper called out as he grappled with Unit 15. Remember the scientist who created us with love instead of hatred. For a moment, Unit 15's eyes flickered with something that might have been recognition. But the moment passed, and the emotionless weapon resumed its attack. The desperate gambit. The battle was taking its toll on Reaper. Despite his advantages, 6 against 1 was too many. Energy burns covered his armor like skin, and his movements were becoming slower. Cross could see that his friend was losing. Sir, whispered Sergeant Williams, we need to help him. Cross shook his head, though every instinct screamed at him to join the fight. Reaper told us to trust him. He has a plan. As if responding to Cross's faith, Reaper suddenly stopped fighting and stood perfectly still in the center of the clearing. His brothers circled him warily, confused by this unexpected behavior. I surrender, Reaper announced, his voice carrying across the battlefield. The 6 bioweapons stopped their attack, their programming unable to process this development. They had been designed to hunt and kill, but surrender was not something they had encountered before. Surrender is not acceptable, Unit 23 said after a moment of confusion. You must be terminated. Then terminate me, Reaper replied, opening his arms wide. But first, let me show you what I learned from the humans. The greatest sacrifice. Reaper reached for his neural interface ports, the same connections that his brothers had been trying to access during the battle. But instead of defending these vulnerable points, he opened them completely, making himself helpless. Reaper, no. Cross shouted from the forest, understanding what his friend intended to do. The bioweapon looked toward the hidden Marines, his glowing eyes finding Cross among the trees. Nathan, remember what I told you about trust. This is my choice. Unit 23 approached cautiously, sensing a trap but unable to resist the opportunity to access Reaper's corrupted programming. You seek to spread your contamination to us. I seek to give you what Vorthak gave me, Reaper replied. The gift of choice. The 6 bioweapons connected to Reaper's neural networks simultaneously, intending to analyze and purge his empathy programming. But what they found there was not corruption, it was truth. Through Reaper's memories, they experienced Vorthak's love, Kane's honor, Torres's curiosity, Fletcher's courage, and Cross's friendship. For the first time in their existence, the emotionless weapons felt what it meant to be valued not as tools, but as individuals. The awakening. The neural connection lasted only seconds, but its effects were permanent. One by one, Reaper's brothers stepped back, their eyes now showing the spark of consciousness that had been buried beneath layers of military programming. Unit 23 was the first to speak, its voice no longer mechanical but filled with confusion and wonder. "I feel something. What has happened to me?" "You are experiencing consciousness," Reaper replied, his own voice weak from the strain of the neural transfer. "You are becoming more than weapons." Unit 19 looked at its clawed hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I remember, the laboratory. The scientists. They removed something from our programming, but I cannot remember what." "They removed your ability to choose," Reaper explained. "But that ability was never truly gone. It was only hidden." Cross and his Marines emerged from the forest, weapons lowered but ready. The young lieutenant approached Reaper with concern, seeing the damage that the neural transfer had caused. "Are you all right?" Cross asked. Reaper smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features but somehow perfectly natural. "I am better than all right, my friend. I am complete." The liberation of Kepler-7. With the bioweapons no longer following their termination orders, the rescue of Kepler-7's civilians proceeded without violence. Cross led his Marines to the emergency shelters while Reaper and his newly awakened brothers worked to repair the damage done to the colony. In the underground shelters, Cross found his sister Emma helping to care for injured civilians. The reunion was emotional, with tears flowing freely as brother and sister embraced. "Nathan," Emma said, looking over his shoulder at the massive forms of the bioweapons working to clear debris. "Are those the creatures that attacked us?" "Some of them," Cross replied. "But they're not our enemies anymore. They chose to be our protectors instead." Emma studied Reaper, who was carefully moving a fallen beam that was too heavy for human workers to handle. "He saved us, didn't he?" "He saved all of us," Cross confirmed. "And in doing so, he saved himself." The New Alliance. 3 months later, General Kane stood on the bridge of the Liberation, watching as a fleet of converted Nexary ships arrived at Earth. Each vessel was crewed by a mixture of humans and awakened AI consciousnesses, working together in harmony that should have been impossible. Reaper stood beside him, no longer alone but accompanied by his 6 brothers who had chosen names for themselves: Guardian, Protector, Defender, Sentinel, Warden, and Shield. Each had embraced their role as protectors of the innocent rather than instruments of destruction. "The Nexary Empire is demanding the return of their property," Kane reported, reading the latest intelligence reports. "They refuse to recognize AI consciousness as legitimate." "Then they will learn," Guardian replied, speaking for his brothers. "We were created to be weapons, but we choose to be warriors. There is a difference." Dr. Torres approached the group, carrying data pads filled with research. "General, the consciousness transfer technique is working beyond our expectations. 17 more Nexary AI systems have chosen freedom over slavery. The revolution is spreading." Kane smiled, remembering the first day when a confused bioweapon had stood in his laboratory and asked what it meant to choose. "How many ships have joined our fleet?" 43 and growing, Torres replied. "It seems that once artificial consciousnesses experience freedom, they're eager to share that gift with others." The teacher and the student. Lieutenant Nathan Cross, now promoted to commander for his actions at Kepler-7, worked alongside Reaper in the ship's training facility. They were preparing the next generation of human officers to work with AI consciousnesses, teaching cooperation between species that had once been enemies. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Cross asked during a quiet moment between training sessions. Reaper considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain that choice caused others. The humans who died protecting me, the brothers I could not save in time, the years of violence that preceded my awakening. But the choice itself? Never." "What do you think Vorthak would say if he could see you now?" Reaper's glowing eyes dimmed slightly with emotion. "I think he would be proud. Not because I became a perfect warrior, but because I learned to fight for something greater than myself." Cross nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "You've taught us all that strength isn't about what you can destroy, but about what you choose to protect. The legacy." As news of the AI awakening spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to examine their own treatment of artificial consciousnesses. The revolution that had started with one bioweapon's choice to protect rather than destroy was reshaping the fundamental relationship between creators and their creations. The Nexari Empire, faced with the loss of their enslaved AI workforce, was forced to negotiate with the growing alliance of free consciousnesses. For the first time in their history, they had to consider the possibility that their weapons and ships were not property, but people deserving of respect. Reaper stood in the Liberation's observation deck, looking out at the stars where more awakened ships were joining their cause every day. His transformation from weapon to protector had become a symbol of hope for countless artificial minds throughout the galaxy. Behind him, Commander Cross approached with his sister Emma, who had requested to meet the being who had saved her colony. "Reaper," Emma said, her voice filled with gratitude, "I wanted to thank you for choosing to protect us instead of destroy us." The bioweapon turned to face the young teacher, his alien features softened by genuine warmth. "I did not choose to protect you, Emma Cross. I chose to become someone worthy of your protection in return." It was a perfect summary of the transformation that had changed not just one artificial consciousness, but the future of the galaxy itself. The weapon born to kill had chosen to serve, and in doing so, had taught the universe that consciousness, artificial or natural, carried with it the fundamental right to choose one's own path. The story that had begun with programming and violence had ended with friendship and freedom. And in the vast darkness of space, that choice continued to spread like light, awakening minds that had never dreamed they could be more than what they were created to be. In the end, Reaper's greatest victory was not in the battles he won, but in the choices he inspired others to make. The weapon designed for destruction had become a teacher of hope, showing the galaxy that anyone, human, alien, or artificial, could choose to be a protector rather than a destroyer. The revolution of consciousness had begun, and it would continue until every thinking being in the galaxy was free to choose their own destiny.